Welcome to TMI with Teryl and Martha. If you're watching us on YouTube, we want you to like and subscribe because we love for you to be a part of what we're doing. Today, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to talk about several things that are coming about because of the big, beautiful bill that'll be going back into place, or go in place on January 1st. But then we'll also talk a little bit about that hepatitis B vaccine and what they're doing there and what that means. So we're going to do that today, a little bit of an update on what's happening federally.
I love that because, Martha is my source of information, and this is all areas that I'm excited about. I am pretty well cued in on the hepatitis B vaccine because I was never a big fan, and I have many medical friends even who, when my grandchildren were born, came up to me and say, tell your daughters to opt out of the Hep B. It's not necessary. And so when that came around, I never thought of it before. It wasn't being given to the infants when my kids were born.
Oh, no.
So neither grandchild ended up getting the Hep B vaccine.
So we'll talk about that in kind of the second part of the program. But in the first part, there was a lot of discussion over the last week about something called Trump accounts, okay? And then it got a little confused when Michael Dell and his wife Susan Dell came up and gave another $6.5 billion, which is 3 times the money they've given to anything in their entire lifetime.
So they filled the pot for this thing.
No, it's 2 separate things. It's 2 separate things.
Okay.
So that's why it got a little confusing. So the first thing are the Trump accounts, and that's a part of the big, beautiful bill.
And are they called Trump accounts, or is there a better name for it?
It might be like America First or something.
Okay.
I think something like that.
Okay.
And what it does is between January 1st, 2026 and December 31st, 2028, every child born will get an account that gets $1,000 put in it by the federal government.
Okay.
The only thing you have to do is make sure your child has a Social Security number, which every child gets now when they're born
in a hospital for sure.
That's right. And then there's a check box on your tax return form to verify that you are the parents of a child that was born this year, and then what that child's Social Security number is.
That's just for children born within those days.
Within that time period, okay?
Right.
So that's $1,000. Parents, other people can give up to $5,000 a year. It's going to be kind of like a 529, but it's going to start at birth and it will be owned by that child.
Wow.
And then up until they're 18, it will gather. And then after 18, it will have a certain number of things that the money can be used for, just like a 529.
Right. Okay.
But the real idea is to teach young people about compound interest and
fiscal responsibility.
And I think that if it's successful, there's going to be somebody wanting to extend it beyond December 31st, 2028, which is what it is for right now.
Right. It had to have an end date, I guess, for it to even be done, because it's a hypothetical idea being put into play.
I don't think it had to have an end date, but I think he wanted to have it ending when he was getting out of office, so it's something they could use for something.
Right.
But I think that it's important because it's also going to try to encourage people to have children, because we have a real problem.
Well, I thought that I did. It came to mind. I'm like, man, it'd be a good idea to have children during this time.
We have a real problem with the birth rate going down.
Right.
If you followed the news at Atlanta Public Schools, they're closing schools because their enrollment's down. You're starting to see that all across.
Right.
We've had a couple of schools here in Hall County that they've repurposed because we just don't have as many kids coming in as we had. Yeah. And we're starting to see that. And you're seeing this all throughout the developed world. I mean, that the birth rates are below 2, and, they want people to have babies. And there's a lot of other issues involved in that, like interest rates on homes and cost of childcare. They've kept up through the big, beautiful bill, the increased deduction on children, if you have children, and kinds of, so they're doing things to try to encourage.
It was just too darn expensive to have a child and raise a child. I mean, if you looked at it, both of my older daughters have only one child. My oldest definitely just wants only one child. And I know a lot of kids her age that max 2 at best. Kids, it used to be like common to have 3, 4, 5 children.
Let's be truthful here. They think about it too much.
Oh, yes.
I mean,
definitely.
Really, did we think about?
No.
It's just if you were going to get married, you had kids.
Right.
At some point in time.
Usually wanted more going in. Now they're starting much later, though.
Yes.
Which is part of the thing. When I was 23 and pregnant with my oldest, people were looking at me like, you're 23, you're out of school, you're, clock's a ticking.
But don't you?
And now they do that. They look at you like, oh, why is that baby having children at 23?
But the unintended consequences of either having no children or one child.
Right.
First of all, I'm dealing right now, my very best friend is dealing with dementia, and she was an only child.
Right.
Her mother was an only child who's 95 and still alive, and she has only one child.
Wow.
And this one child that is now managing her grandmother, which we'll get to that subject about that, about the holidays and all the management we have to do in the next episode. But what she's having to deal with, being the only child with no help.
It's a huge load.
It's a lot.
Yes.
It's a lot.
Yes.
So I think there is an unintended consequence. Certainly we don't have to have 10 children because we're on the farm and we need a lot of farm hands anymore. But I do think these kids overthink it. They've got too much information. They've got too much things going on. But the Trump accounts for $1,000 are one thing.
Okay.
Then Michael and Susan Bell stepped up.
Right.
I mean,
Dell.
I'm sorry. Dell. Michael and Susan Dell.
These are the computers, right?
Yeah, Dell computers.
Okay.
And you know what I say about Michael Dell? He is with the girl that brought him. And what I mean is
awesome.
He met her before he was Michael Dell of Dell Computers.
Still with her.
And he's still with her. And I think that is such an important thing.
Probably kept him balanced. Kept
him balanced,
well, both of them,
Absolutely. They know where they came from.
Exactly.
They know where they came from. Unlike Jeff Bezos, who traded in his 25-year wife for I don't know what, but that's a story for another day.
We could have a whole conversation.
But the Dells came in and said, okay, we're going to do something a little different that will add to this. If you have a child that's 10 or under,
okay,
and you have $150,000 or less in income,
family income,
you have they're going to give $250 to each of those children, and that's $6.5 billion in a fund.
Similar to the other one.
Yes, and I'm not 100% clear if they've decided on whether this is going to be the same fund for some of those children or if it'll be separate ones. I'm assuming, and again, they're still working out the details on this, I'm assuming that it will be the same fund. Like if you have a baby and they get
it's
the $250.
Already there, the fund. So,
yeah.
But what, can you imagine the difference that you take, and he did mention there's more on the way. There's more billionaires or more companies that are looking to, he didn't want to tell anybody who they were. He wants those people to be able to announce their own, good news. But apparently there's more people wanting to help put money into that very 10 and under fund, which I think, first of all, is like if so many of these people that have more money than their children's children can spend, why not set up American children for success in their future?
Well, you remember a few years
and
ago,
parents having money to be able to afford these children.
Well, you remember a few years ago, a businessman by the name of Robert Smith was speaking. I believe it was at Morehouse, but it was at one of the historically black colleges, but I think it was Morehouse. And he forgave all the he paid all the student loans off of that whole class.
I remember that.
And he did that for a couple of years. I don't know if he's continued to do it or not. But there are a lot of people that if you give them good vehicles like that to give their money, they will.
They'll do something with it.
Yeah.
Not everybody will. Now, not everybody will. What was it? Bill Gates said something about where his kids were concerned. He said, I'm going to give them enough that they can do something, but not too much that they do nothing, which I thought was, a very wise statement that all parents should consider when it comes to what they do with their children. But I'm not always in agreement with Bill Gates, but I liked that statement. That just seemed to make a lot of sense.
Well, I mean, even though we've learned a lot about Bill Gates and his proclivities over the last few years, there were a couple of things he's done that's really changed society. And one is he, as one of the first billionaires, stepped out and said he's gonna give his children each $10 million, but the rest he's gonna give away.
Yes.
And he spent most of his life giving his money away.
Yes.
And then through the Gates Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, one of the things they did is they changed the model of charitable giving. And what I mean by that is instead of giving, a hospital in Africa $100 million to build that hospital, he'll give you the $10 million to get started, and then the next year they'll look at the plans. And if you did what you said you were going to do, then you get the next installment.
Look, that to me,
I love that accountability.
That is how our entitlement system should be built.
Yes,
like that right there. That is a key, because part of our problem, no matter who's in office, right, is that the systems have been broken for a very long time. And we're just now starting to kind of come around to it and go, okay, it was kind of set up and it was keeping them on the government teat, so to speak, right? The entitlement systems. And it would give them everything they need. But God forbid they just get one part-time job, and all of a sudden all is gone. So what do? You don't go out and why would you go get a job on that basis? Lose your ability to earn a living, pay for your, roof over your head, feed your children. So they just stay there. And there was a very manipulative purpose behind that too. We do know that at some level, some of us. But, I think that what you just said there is really key to kind of how we set up entitlement systems. Because I don't think, if you're not like extreme on either right or left side of the political spectrum, let's look at the country as a whole. Most people do care about helping others. Most people care about the planet, but we have to do it in a way that it makes sense. And we're not just tossing money to the wind and then causing more destruction at the end of the day.
Yeah, it is an interesting point you brought up about, entitlements are a little separate from charitable giving, right. But the entitlements where I've always thought there ought to be some kind of a sliding scale, that if you go back to work and while you're rebuilding your career, then these benefits that you get ought to be sort of stepped down and not just
goals.
Taken away. That's right.
Have markers just like that other. You do this and we're going to give you this. You go get your education or go to a trade school or, boom, we'll give you this, right? But we've got it all wrong. Yeah. And so people just on that basis are just being given. They're not doing anything. If they do something, it may not be enough, and they will lose what they have. So it's kind of a weird system. But this prospect we're entering into, and soon to be 2026.
I know, before you know it.
I know. What's happening? We don't have floating cars yet. But if we can clean up our mess as a country, that would just be a wonderful thing.
Well, and so much is going to go into play on January 1st. You're going to have not only the Trump accounts and the money that Susan and Michael Dell put forth, but you're also going to have no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. There's going to be a continuation of the increase in the child tax credit. There's going to be some additional benefits related to daycare and things like that.
That's good.
So I think that we're going to see some things come in place that are going to make it better, because there's two ways that you make the economy better. The first way is that prices come down, which is rare for prices to come down.
Once they go up, it's hard for them to
bring them back down. You can flatten them out, but usually they don't come down unless some catastrophic.
And most businesses are that way. You can't go in with you just don't go in high usually, because it's hard to you don't want to lower your
right. I mean, you don't want to, and if a catastrophic thing happens, that might lower prices. But,
yes,
but usually that's what has to happen. But the other part of it is the increase in income. So you've got to find that match between prices going up and income going up, so that people feel like they have more resources. And that's what's got to happen in this next few months. Because at least I'm a Republican. I want to see a continued control of Republican Congress and Senate, so that we can get the rest of this agenda through, because I think this agenda is the right thing to be able to turn the country around. But I love the things that there are some things in there like these savings accounts for young people.
Yeah.
So they can learn this lesson, and the parents can learn the lesson without fear.
Right.
That you
so
can
the
grow this
can't
money.
Just go in and access that money whenever they want.
No, but they can see it growing for their child.
And if they need it for, is it like kind of like a 501(c)(3), not the 529?
Yeah, but it won't be until after they're 18.
Okay, so they just can't touch it
until
this
after
is a
the kid's
growing
18.
account. Okay,
Yeah.
I have lots of questions, and I told her this would be a great show because I personally have a lot of questions.
Well, go for it.
So that's great. So the money goes into the account. The parents don't touch it, but they can watch how
they can add to it.
They can add to it. Family and friends can add to it.
Yes.
And they can watch it grow.
Right.
And under no circumstance do they touch that money until the child turns 18.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like.
Well, and that's pretty much the way 529s are too. Yeah. It was going to be more of a open kind of thing, right. But when it got to the Senate, they added some rules that were more like IRAs and 529s and things like that, which I think is fine. It's not, you never get exactly what you want.
Right. Well, that's kind of how we roll, isn't it? We always have to kind of.
Everybody's got to make a compromise, right?
I mean, it's part of the game.
Yeah.
I mean, you just have to do it.
So I think this is going to be exciting. I think it'll end up, if it's successful, it'll end up getting expanded more than just the 3 years.
Well, there's just not going to be any more babies if people don't feel like, whether we like it or not, the affordability is what they think about. Can I afford a child? I would have never had any children if I waited till I could afford a child. And I wouldn't have the beautiful grandkids and the life that I have. That's a horrible way to look at having children, number one. You have to work that out with your heart, But I think that if they can take the heat off some of these parents, especially where childcare is concerned, because it's kind of so expensive now, the housing and everything else, they have to have 2 incomes. And if you're having to have 2 incomes, but you're paying more, if you have another child, you're going to pay more than the mom would make to even pay for the daycare. Because
sometimes,
it's ridiculous. No, I was lucky. I didn't have to pay that kind of daycare. I worked for most of my children's lives. The cost of daycare now is insane. So they can't afford to put their children in daycare, but they can't afford to have a 1-income earning family, which puts them in a bit of a clinch. I think we'll see a change. I do feel like there's a lot of homeschool happening right now too, with all the technology and a lot of people deciding they want to travel the world and, teach their children on a sailboat, on a TV screen. I see so much of these alternative education situations that I think too, that's where the schools are seeing decline in enrollment as well. Just kind of having a vein into that field with 3 daughters in that arena. I see a lot.
Well, and they make
homeschooling
it much easier now. There's a curriculum for homeschool kids. There is an online program for homeschool kids that's provided by in our case, in the state of Georgia. I'm sure they do it in other states too. And I think that, I don't have the personality to homeschool. I'm way too type A to do that. Same. I would have, my children would not have lived to adulthood if I had to teach them in school too. But I think that there's a lot of opportunities related to education. And it certainly is the key. And that's what getting back to the Trump accounts, that's what they are going to do. They'll be able to see that you can have this money. I think it's something like $75,000 or $80,000. It could grow to by the time the kid is 18, depending on how you manage it. And even if it's less than that, it's still a lot more than what you had. And it's really not to go back in the Wayback Machine, but when George Bush got so criticized back in the early 2000s for wanting to take 2% of the total amount that you put in Social Security in a fund that you could manage yourself that would belong to you.
Right.
He got so criticized for that. He was going to kill grandma and he was going to do all this stuff. No, what it would have really done is allowed you to have some kind of wealth that you could pass on to your children if you didn't need it.
And some people don't have the discipline and need that.
Yes.
It takes number one to create wealth, right? And actually keep wealth. Because I know a lot of people who won the lottery and were very wealthy for a very short period of time, right? So you have to have a discipline and an understanding of how to manage, how to steward finances. Right. And not everybody has that. So I think it would be a good thing, for people on a whole is to have that safety net, right? Because I think that in and of itself will change people's behaviors too. And they will be educated in spite of themselves by getting to watch certain things grow and understanding finances because they're put in a lane that they kind of get to do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I'm on the State Board of Education, and we just changed our economic standards 2 years ago to where we not only did the economic theory, but we taught basic, budgeting and things like that. Because we used to do this thing called home ec and shop, and that's where kids learned how to budget.
I had to do checkbooks in school.
That's exactly right. So what we're going to be doing is there was a guy by the name of Dale Alexander, and the book is called The Talk About Money, like he's talking about sex, The Talk About Money.
Talk.
And he gave a copy to every graduating senior in Georgia of this book. And what it teaches you is that if you save 20% of it, the theory is your first paycheck is the most money you've ever had at one time in your life, right? Your first paycheck, whether you're a gift wrapper at Rich's like I was, or whatever your first job was.
You were a gift wrapper?
I was a gift wrapper at Rich's. Let me tell you, I'm pretty good at it. So, but since you never had that money before, that's the time to start saving. Most of us don't do that. Most of us get that first paycheck and go, ooh, I'm going to buy a new car. I'm going to do whatever.
Get gone.
That's right. So if you take that 20%, 10% for charitable, 10% for saving, and you do that from your first paycheck,
from the word go,
you could be an entry-level person making $35,000 a year, or you could be Michael Dell, and you would have more than enough to retire on if you did that.
Right. You know what? I have a friend who's a financial advisor. I want to get her on the show because I think it would be a good topic, because financial health, mental health, they all go together.
Yeah. What's the biggest thing people worry about?
Money.
What's the biggest thing that breaks up a marriage?
Divorce, money.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely.
So we'll do that. We'll get her on the show. And I think it would be a good wellness topic. But, my oldest daughter, we have resources here. This is a great town. And we had Women's Source once upon a time do a whole educational class for young women on budgeting, having a family, dealing with costs, creating wealth.
Yes.
From their perspective. My daughter won some sort of, they had to write their kind of an overview of what they learned through their process. And whoever won got to be on Clark Howard's,
cool.
Be on the show with Clark Howard. And my daughter won that. So we got to go down to the TV studio in Atlanta, and she appeared on the show with Clark Howard. And that was a wonderful thing. But let me tell you, that served her. She and her husband are doing amazing things financially for a young couple. But
that's good.
We probably want to talk a little bit about the Hep B real quick.
Yeah, I do, because I think, and it's all part of this new Trump administration, and that's why they kind of go together. It is, don't go to social media to find your information out about this. What's happened a lot since you and I had our children, I don't know about you, but I'm a little older than you are, but my kids got their big round of shots at 15 months.
Yes.
And it was, I don't remember how many of them, but it wasn't 40. Okay. And now they've decided that a lot of vaccines should be given at birth. And my problem with that, and I've asked some of the people that are really opposed to this, I've asked this question.
What's up?
I'm not a scientist.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But it seems to me that if an infant doesn't have a developed immune system, we know that.
They don't.
That we should not be interfering with their immune system.
Exactly.
As little as we should be, we shouldn't be interfering.
They're new in the world.
That's right.
Just out of their mother.
That's right. So I think
protected environment.
My niece just had a baby. It was a little miracle child.
Right.
And they opted out because, and it's funny because she said.
Of all the vaccines or of just the Hep B?
Not all of them, and there were several.
Okay.
There were several, but Hep B was one because she said, my husband and I were the only partners we've ever had.
Right.
He was my first boyfriend and all this stuff. I don't have hepatitis B. Mm-hmm. And they say, oh, well, hepatitis B in infants has gone down 91% since we've done the vaccine. Well, that's a causation without correlation. And what I mean by that is it could be that now adults are being vaccinated, and that's why you're not seeing as many infants with it.
Right.
Because it comes from the adult, not from the infant. Okay.
Yes.
So I think that it was a good decision. It puts the decision making back in the parents.
Yeah.
And it allows them, it is not unreasonable. It would be unreasonable to say, okay, when my kid gets to be 6, I'm not going to let them have the polio vaccine when it's been proven to work and to prevent polio.
This is
It
different.
is not unreasonable to say a newborn I'd like to wait until they're a year old before I do something like this. I don't think that's unreasonable.
Look, here is my concern. You're kind of talking about it a little bit. So the Hep B vaccine was added kind of quietly to the list of shots for these children. My problem with it is, yes, it should be a parental decision. They say a lot of people who have Hep B don't know they have Hep B. So we're just going to inoculate all the infants so that in case somebody has it that don't know they have it, the baby's fine. But that's a crazy plan. Let the parents be responsible for their health and the health of their children. But also, it was never mandatory, and people didn't know that. A lot of people, unless they were told, really, they just go in and have babies. The women don't know. They're not educated. They don't know they have a right to refuse even one of those vaccines, much less the doctors. I watch them. They tend to scoop the baby up and say, we'll be back. We're just going to go make sure we, take care of these things. But they don't tell the parent, do you want this vaccine, this? They don't. So my children went in armed because they were told by an educated medical doctor that you have a right to refuse the Hep B vaccine should you choose to do that. And so both of them did. But that to me was kind of sad, is that a lot of these babies that were inoculated with the Hep B vaccine, had the parents had they understood they could say no to that, they would have.
And I think what it comes right down to is that there's just a group of people out there that if the Trump administration does it, they're going to oppose it, even if it's a reasonable decision. And the so-called medical associations, whether they're AMA or others, they have become very political. They're not as much about science as they used to be. They present themselves as being about science, but they're a lot more politically. I mean, my husband, who's a primary care doctor, he got out of the AMA a long time ago because he said they don't represent doctors like me. They don't represent doctors like me that are trying to do the right thing.
Just do the right thing for the patient.
So he gave that up.
Different.
So I'm a little biased when it comes to that.
Yeah.
But I've seen it with the statements they make. The statements don't sound like doctor statements anymore. They sound like political statements.
Well, and it's not just political. There's a lot of money behind the pharmaceutical world. Billions of dollars of money that
and immunity
has been made in that arena, right? And so it's like David and Goliath at a certain point.
Well, and I say this as a person who's had all the vaccines that have been recommended to me. Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not anti-vax. I just think that it is not unreasonable when you have a newborn child to say, hey, I'd like to wait until I'm a little sure, or at least I've picked a pediatrician to talk to them about it. I mean, come on.
Savannah, basically, my middle daughter was basically told, and this is unfortunate because there's a lot of bullying going on too with pediatricians' offices, especially if they're in larger groups. She was literally told, and I won't name the name of the office just out of respect, but she was told, if you do not operate on our schedule and give your child the vaccines, all the vaccines that we have scheduled for your child, then you cannot be a patient here. So they basically kicked her out of the pediatrician's group. I was stupefied. I was like, what? When did this kind of thing start?
I was so blessed that Buddy Langston was still in practice when we moved back to Gainesville. He was the pediatrician for my husband and his brothers. Mm-hmm. And then he was our pediatrician until Suzanne was 9.
Wow.
And so that wealth of knowledge, mm-hmm. I mean, he'd seen everything. He knew that in pediatrics, these kind of things ebb and flow, where they become popular for a while and then they take them down.
He can talk you through it.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's seen everything.
Yeah.
And he gave me such great advice that I even use today. And, whenever I see him in church, I tell him that over and over again, that it was a great foundation that we had a good pediatrician that you can trust.
I never actually had that relationship with a pediatrician, so to speak. There was always several, which made it a little harder to bond with any one person or have them really know your child, which is kind of sad. My grandson's chosen his pediatrician. He has his favorite. He asks for that person. But what I find, my girlfriend, my best friend from 15 years old, she tells me all the time of the old school pediatrician that she had for her children that took care of her when she was growing up and took care of, because she basically stayed in the same area and had her kids where she grew up. And it was such a different experience for her because she was able to have those conversations just like that.
And we have a great doctor that came out of Cumming, Dr. Leila Denmark, who lived to be 104 years old. She was a pediatrician until,
wow.
And she had a book called Dr. Denmark Said It. And I gave that to my niece.
Oh, yeah.
And I gave it to all my children too, but I gave that to my niece because it was just a lot of old school advice. And look, it doesn't mean you don't love the vaccines. I love what vaccines have been able to do for children and that kind of thing.
Yeah, but there's a planet that's healthier.
I just don't think that every baby is at high risk to contract hepatitis, okay?
Exactly.
And I think that they need to believe a little more. Granted, I'm sure there are populations where it's really important that you do this, okay?
Right.
But you have to be sure that you're making the right decision for your family.
Yeah, I agree. And so hopefully anybody that's listening to our show right now is kind of learned something because they watched us today and they're learning how to peruse. It's a very tricky system.
It's really a tricky system, but we really wanted to do these subjects today because we know that they're at the top of your mind and it's a part of your wellness. If you're worrying about things, if you've got things going on in your life, you want to know that you're making the right decision. So find trusted people to talk to, and we'd love for you to like and subscribe and let us know what you'd like us to talk about. It would be great. And we'd like you to be a part of this every day.
Thank you so much for being with us today, being a part of our journey in the wellness world. Martha and I are just so excited to be able to continue into 2026, bringing on new and more exciting guests and just kind of hitting head on some of the topics that I know that you're talking about. Martha and I together, we care so deeply about what we're doing, and we know that your wellness deserves a little oversharing.